Welcome back to 28storms.com/cyclone. For all the regular viewers that have been out there, I know there's been quite a lot of time that has gone by since the last update, but this is also the first time we've had anything to track in the South Pacific in quite a while. We have newly formed Tropical Cyclone 4P, or Evan as the Fiji Meteorological Service has designated it, and that is between Fiji and Samoa, and this is going to be the highlight of today's video. Also, before we really go into any details, I would like to mention that if this is your first time visiting 28storms.com/cyclone, or even if you're a prior visitor but just haven't been here in quite a while, we've gone ahead and revamped the navigation menu, so now everything is out on the left, and if you click on one tab, it'll give you more information. So for example, if you want to see the latest information from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, some of the primary links are listed below. So I'll let you go ahead and take your own time to go through some of this new information that we've added to the web page, and as always, the blog will be located near the top once everything is uploaded, including the video. So without further ado, this was the first tropical cyclone update from the U.S. Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Maximum sustained winds of tropical cyclone 4P were 35 knots. The storm is moving toward the east or east-northeast at roughly 10 knots, and you can see the forecast. It does take the center of the storm directly over or just to the north of Samoa, and it takes a sharp curve back toward the southwest after meandering around the islands for at least a day or two, and it misses American Samoa just to the west. However, with a slow rate of speed and the model forecast uncertainty, this part of the forecast is still highly subject to change. But what we are confident about is that eventually there will be a turn back toward the southwest, and that is why interests even in Fiji are advised to keep tabs on this storm. As you can see, based on the forecast intensities, Tropical Cyclone 4P is expected to become quite strong. At least that is the forecast from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. They're forecasting a peak intensity of 100 knots as the storm begins to move away from the Samoan Islands. As we switch sources, this is the latest forecast track from the Fiji Meteorological Service, and Fiji is the official agency for tropical cyclone forecasting across the South Pacific. There really isn't too much in the way of significant differences between the two forecasts. However, the Fiji Meteorological Service is bringing the cyclone directly into Samoa from the west, and this is starting to look like the more likely track forecast based on transzone satellite imagery. In addition, they strengthen the storm into a Category 2 cyclone as it begins to leave Samoa and turn back toward the southwest. Furthermore, the U.S. National Weather Service office in Pago Pago, American Samoa, is keeping a very close watch on Tropical Cyclone 4P as well. Their latest discussion includes the mention that computer models suggest winds picking up tonight and into Wednesday morning through Thursday. The Fiji Meteorological Service has progged gale force winds to arrive near Samoa before it reaches American Samoa on Wednesday. Strong and gusty winds and rain are expected during the next couple of days. Also, as we can see here on the National Weather Service graphic, we have high surf advisories, small craft advisories, and gale watches already in effect. Furthermore, the National Weather Service has updated their zone forecast late this afternoon, and highlighted the time in which they think that the worst conditions will exist. As we look into Thursday and Thursday night, the forecast calls for occasional showers, locally heavy rain at times with isolated thunderstorms, highs near 80, lows in the mid to upper 70s. Also, the northwest winds, look at that, that's at least tropical storm force with winds at around 40 to 55 miles per hour. Also, keep in mind that the expectations for the island are highly subject to change based on any changes that we may see over the next 24 to 48 hours with regards to the forecast track of the tropical cyclone. As we begin our satellite analysis, we'll first take a look at the entire southern Pacific using the visible and standard infrared satellite animation as we begin to lose daylight. And you can see two distinct areas of low pressure. We were monitoring this broad low well to the southeast of Samoa. However, that system has begun to run into more unfavorable conditions, and development is not expected. But obviously, the stronger of the two systems is now Tropical Cyclone 4P as it continues to move toward the east. Water vapor imagery shows the tropical cyclone continuing to slide toward the east, at least for now, and that's thanks to the presence of a near equatorial ridge just to the north, and the steering motion just to the south of that ridge is going to allow the storm to continue pushing toward the east, toward the islands. However, this ridge is not going to be the dominant steering factor for long. In fact, more so in the way of mid-latitude synoptic features will begin to take over, and we will touch more on that in just a moment. More importantly, we're going to first take a more zoomed in look using the visible and standard infrared floater, and you can see the tropical cyclone quickly advancing towards Samoa And as we talked about just a moment ago, comparing the Joint Typhoon Warning Center track to the one from the Fiji Meteorological Service, it looks like Fiji has the right idea with the storm continuing to march straight into the islands instead of first deviating to the north and then swinging back toward the south. It looks like it's going to make a beeline straight toward Samoa, and conditions will rapidly go downhill as early as within the next 6 to 12 hours. It is also important to understand that the cyclone is continuing to intensify at the moment, and it looks like the cyclone will continue to intensify further even as the storm is passing through the islands due to the favorable conditions, that being very warm sea surface temperatures and very light vertical wind shear in the atmosphere. Furthermore, the enhanced infrared satellite animation shows that convection or thunderstorm activity is developing directly over the center of circulation, which is another indicator that Tropical Cyclone 4P is becoming stronger and better defined. We've also received an updated microwave satellite look at the tropical cyclone, and this microwave satellite imagery shows what appears to be a developing eye wall, so I fully expect that the next upcoming tropical cyclone update from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is going to show maximum sustained winds of at least 55 to 60 knots, which is a notable increase from their first advisory. Here is another look at the enhanced infrared using the RB top floater imagery, and you can almost begin to tell that the center of circulation is co-located directly within this blob of convection that is formed within the last 3 to 6 hours. Here's a look at the sea surface temperature profile for all of the Southwest Pacific. You can see Fiji located toward the bottom left hand of the picture, and you can see Samoa just to the northeast of Fiji. And all throughout this area, sea surface temperatures are well in excess of 26 degrees Celsius. In fact, some of these locations are nearing 30 degrees Celsius, which is more than favorable for tropical cyclone development. And as we take a look at the ocean heat content, which is not only a measure of the sea surface temperatures, but also the temperature of the depths directly below the surface, and we see very high oceanic heat content all throughout this region. Again, here's a look at Samoa. The storm is coming into Samoa from the west, and all throughout this area, the oceanic heat content is, as a matter of fact, favorable for even rapid development and even significant strengthening, as long as the other conditions are also favorable. So with that in mind, here's a look at the upper level wind shear pattern, and you can see the position of the tropical cyclone here. And if we look at the streamline analysis, you can tell that there is an upper level ridge developing over the top of the tropical cyclone. And as we turn on the color representation, the shear values, you can see that the vertical wind shear, as we start to get into these navy blue colors, that is, vertical wind shear value is below 10 knots. So all throughout this region, we've got favorable vertical wind shear and favorable sea surface temperatures. So with all of this in mind, we're going to now take a look at some of the latest forecast model guidance coming out. And what you're now looking at is the 0Z run of the Global Forecast System, which is the GFS, a forecast model run by the National Weather Service in the United States. It shows the tropical cyclone continuing to strengthen as it moves directly over American Samoa, and then it starts to make a gradual turn toward the southwest no later than within the next 60 to 72 hours. And as it continues to move southwestward, you can see that the storm will intensify throughout the forecast period, at least based on this model run, and it shows the storm also moving toward Fiji, which is why that even though this is an extended range forecast, interests all across this region are advised to keep a very close watch on this tropical cyclone. So why is the GFS supporting this forecast track? Well, in order to figure that out, we need to look more so at the steering mechanisms, which are higher up in the atmosphere near the mid-levels. So we've zoomed out, and that is what we're going to look at next. So just to get your bearings, this is Queensland, New South Wales, Coral Sea, New Caledonia, Fiji, our developing tropical cyclone, and immediately to the east of the cyclone, of course, is Samoa. So as we go out into the 48-hour forecast time, you can see that there has been one dramatic change over the Coral Sea, and that is this upper level low has significantly strengthened and amplified as it has begun to move a little bit closer to the equator. So think about this upper level low as more so of a trough or weakness in the atmosphere, and the tendency for tropical cyclones is for the cyclone to try to find a way to move into that trough, and the troughs are the features that help move the cyclones more toward the poles, which of course is another natural tendency. What's perhaps most important to understand is that as you start to get a more amplified pattern with this trough becoming more dominant over the Coral Sea, you're going to have an equal and opposite strengthening ridge out here immediately to the east and to the north of New Zealand. So we're starting to see this ridge, and remember that a flow around the ridge in the southern hemisphere is going to be clockwise. So if your flow is like this, the tropical cyclone to the northeast is going to start feeling that northeast to southwest flow, and the ridge combined with this trough is going to help support more of a southwesterly turn with regards to tropical cyclone 4P, aka Evan. So as we advance from 72 into 96 hours, so now we're looking at the 4-day forecast. The storm has already started to make that turn toward the southwest, and within 4 to 5 days, it's forecast to be approaching the nation of Fiji. And also, the pattern immediately to the south across the mid-latitudes is forecast to remain generally amplified, with that trough hanging tough out across the Coral Sea, with the ridging now entrenched even as far south as New Zealand. So we've got this ongoing pattern here that would support a continued southwest motion. Now, for any interests out there that are watching from Australia, this is absolutely no threat to you whatsoever, because as long as this trough or upper level low is situated out across the Coral Sea, that is the furthest west this storm could possibly get, and eventually this upper level low is going to support more of a turn toward the south in the general direction of New Zealand. But as the storm continues to gain latitude more toward the poles, it'll start to take more so in the way of non-tropical characteristics and transition out of being a fully tropical cyclone. Also, just to show that the models have been initialized correctly and they are seeing all of the main steering parameters in the right way, this is a look at the Coral Sea water vapor animation. We can see that the upper level low being forecast out across the Coral Sea is already starting to move north and amplify, and immediately to the northeast you can see on the very northeast tip of the screen you can see the tropical cyclone, and over time we're going to start to see more signs of ridging out toward the southeast to the south of the storm as this upper level low continues to strengthen. In addition, we have fairly good agreement between the GFS and ECMWF models with regard to the overall steering forecast idea. We will be getting an updated run of the European ECMWF model within the next 1 to 2 hours, but this is the prior 12Z run from earlier today, and this is looking at the mid-level 500 millibar forecast pattern. And as we go into 24 and 48 hours, the same features I would like to point out once again. We've got this anomalously strong upper level low with below average heights over the Coral Sea. You can also make out the tropical cyclone near Samoa. And as we go into 72 and 96 and 120 hours, first off, actually this is 96, so day 4, we can see that the trough is beginning to amplify, and the whole pattern overall across the South Pacific is continuing to amplify, and now you're starting to see that strengthening ridge take shape. So by no later than day 4, we should be seeing more in the way of ridging between Samoa, Fiji, and New Zealand to the south. And again, it's the trough and the ridge combined that is going to set up an alleyway for the storm to move between these two systems and move more toward the southwest. By 120 hours, we can see faint signs of the tropical cyclone situated just to the west of Fiji. So we're going to continue to keep close tabs on this system for you here at 28storms.com/cyclone. I hope that you found this video informative. If so, please go ahead and try to share this information with others that may be interested, and also try to check back as often as you can. Even if we don't produce a video every time, if there is a significant model update that we are aware of, or if anything significant changes, we will do our best to try to keep the web page updated with at least some discussions or image updates. Otherwise, please keep it tuned to the official forecast agencies of the South Pacific. We're talking about the Fiji Meteorological Service, the U.S. Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and also your local weather office if you happen to be a resident citizen of one of those islands down there that may be affected by the tropical cyclone. So thank you again for choosing 28storms.com/cyclone as a source of information, and we will try to do our best to keep you as informed as possible.